a powerful woman. She is an attorney. She's been voted the last few years the top 50 attorneys in Texas. She's like number one. And I asked her, I said, how do you become that? Or what do you like position yourself? How does that work? She goes, you don't prepare, you don't plan for it, you don't ask for it, they just watch you and you get it. She is a branding expert in my mind. She's an attorney, but I've had a chance to spend a lot of time with her, and that's why she's here. Her story is powerful, and she just got through telling me, sorry, I'm going to tell on you. She knows if she's going to tell me something, she better be careful. It'll be with no secrets, right? The struggle is real. She said, I'm feeling a little, she goes to big attorney. She closes and argues and jury trials and she talks for a living, right? And she is a hammer too. Not the Texas hammer, but a hammer, right? Y'all know who that is? I heard that down here, up here in Mount Pleasant. But she goes, I'm feeling really vulnerable right now. She goes, I can go up there and tell your story, no problem. I can go and tell my client's story, no problem. I do all the research. She goes, but this is like something I don't really tell. And she is definitely one of the thought leaders inside the Edge. Hope you guys text Edge and get in that for the next few days. But she is truly an inspiration to me. A lot of women have already come to us in the Edge talking about how impactful she is, how strong she is. And she's somebody I would definitely let my children around, and I would plan on that happening too. So please give her a strong welcome. All the way from Dallas, Texas, Michelle O'Neill. Come see us.
Thank you. You're very welcome. Let's give Michael Ray Newman a whoop, okay? He needs a whoop. As he said, I'm an attorney in Dallas. I'm actually a divorce attorney. And, So if I was to get up here and to give you a closing argument about any of my clients, I could do that with no problem. But what they've asked me to do today, and what I'm inspired by Michelle Prince even more to do today, is to tell you my story. This is not my story about me being a lawyer. It's not my story about my clients. It's not my story about my war stories. This is my story. If I make it through without crying, it's going to be a miracle. I was practicing with my husband last night, and I cried 3 times. So we'll see if I can make it less than 3, then we'll be doing all right. So whenever my husband and I met, we were happy. We were fat and happy. We went to eat a lot. We, see if I can get this thing to work the right way. If not, it worked. All right. We got married. We go out to eat all the time. My husband is a chef by education. He doesn't work in the industry anymore, but he cooks at home a lot, and he cooks good. So after we got married, we were taking his son. His son lives in Phoenix, and he comes to visit us, and we were taking him to Disney World one summer. It was July. Any of you have been to Disney World in July? July is not the month to go to Disney World. We get on this American Airlines plane, and we find our seats, and I sit down. I hadn't flown in a while. And I sit down, and I start trying to button the seatbelt. And the seatbelt wouldn't button. It wouldn't go together. And I had to flag down a flight attendant, and I said, ma'am, I need a seatbelt extender. And you know how that works. Any of you that have been on a plane that have seen anybody that needs a seatbelt extender, the next thing that the flight attendant does is she goes, oh, I think I have one right here. I have a seatbelt extender. Here, ma'am, here's your seatbelt extender. She might as well just say, here's the fat girl on the plane. I was humiliated. Humiliated was an understatement. It was horrible. We go to Disney World, and there are some rides I couldn't ride because I was too big. You see, I couldn't enjoy life because I had become a slave to my own weight. The next month, after we got back from Disney in July that year, the next month we go I went to a conference, a lawyer's conference in August in San Antonio. That time I flew Southwest, which frankly, love Southwest Airlines. I love flying Southwest Airlines, but Southwest Airlines is a little bit worse in that situation because here I am walking down the aisle of shame, and everybody you pass, they're darting their eyes, they're raising their newspaper because they don't want the big girl to sit next to them. And I finally found a seat on the airplane, got sat down, the seatbelt wouldn't buckle. Miss, may I please have an extender? And again, I think they must teach this in flight attendant school. Oh yes, here, I have one right here. Let me get you one. Again, fat girl on the plane right here. I was at a time in my life when I should have been the happiest. I was barely a year into my marriage. I was a newlywed and I should have been happy. But I wasn't. You see, I'd been overweight as a child. I was overweight as a teenager. I was overweight pretty much all of my life. I had tried every diet there was. I tried the cabbage soup diet. I tried the hard-boiled egg diet. Do y'all remember that one from the 70s? My mama loved that diet. We'd eat grapefruit and hard-boiled eggs all day, every day. Atkins, South Beach. Weight Watchers, Willpower. I tried it all. And it might work a little, and then right back that weight would come. I told you I was at that conference that August. Whenever I got there, you know, San Antonio in August is also a miserable place to be. It is hot. And I was hot, and I was miserable. My husband was going to join me a couple of days later, and before he got there, I was so downtrodden. I was at one of the lowest points of my life. I remember laying in the bed of the hotel room and just sobbing. Because to be completely open with you, I'd say completely honest, but I hate it when people say that because I'm always going to be honest with you. But open, maybe not, but to be completely open with you. I had decided in that moment that killing myself was a better alternative to living the way that I was. My husband gets down there and I'm a mess. And I remember laying on the hotel room bed and he's trying to console me. And he tells me how much he loves me. He tells me, I wish he was here so y'all could meet him. He's a really great guy. He tells me that he married me for me and that he loves me for me and he loves me the way I am. And then he says some words that changed my life. He says, now remember, we were both fat, right? He says, we will do this together. We are a team. We are Team O'Neill. We will do this together. I will do it with you. So we continued to try some diets. We lost a little weight together, but it wasn't a long-term solution. So I decided to have weight loss surgery. Now, we're a team, right? And he was overweight too. So oops, wait a minute, back. There we go, wrong button. Okay, well maybe I'm not supposed to go back. So he was overweight too. So I had surgery and a month later he had weight loss surgery. And when we recovered from the surgery, we realized that surgery was just a tool. And as with anything in life, you have to take advantage of your tools. In order to change your life, you have to take advantage of your tools. And so, any of you who have studied Zig Ziglar, you know about the wheel of life. The wheel of life, he tells us, the personal, physical, family, financial, mental, spiritual, career. The 7 spokes of your wheel of life. And so when you want to change your life, you examine the 7 spokes of the wheel. And you evaluate where you're weakest on a scale of 1 to 10. You evaluate each of those spokes on a scale of 1 to 10, and somewhere it's going to be weak. And so, whenever one of those spokes is weak, your wheel isn't going to turn right. But when they're balanced, your wheel will turn smoothly. So, in losing weight, even after weight loss surgery, you have to take advantage of your tools. One of the things I discovered as I began that process is that food was my friend. Food was my BFF. Food was my best friend in the universe. Food got me through so many bad days. I remember a day whenever I was in college, I'd broken up with a boyfriend, and I was so upset about it that I went to Whataburger. And I sat there at 3 a.m. in Whataburger and cried in my Whataburger. Food was my friend. And because of my weight loss surgery does 2 things. One, it restricts your capability of eating quantity of food, but it also changes your hormones so that you're not hungry anymore. But because I started grieving the loss, I couldn't eat anymore. My best friend was gone. And I went through a grief process, and I've decided that one of the reasons people fail at weight loss, whether it's with surgery or otherwise, is because you start grieving the loss of your friend, and you're in that grief process, and then there's food right over there. So what do? You run back to your friend. But like any dysfunctional relationship, you got to let it go. You can't, if you're going to be successful, you can't run back to your friend. So I had to decide in that moment, was I going to do, as Michael Ray Newman will probably tell you later, whatever it takes to be successful. I decided I would do whatever it took to make this work. Because where I was at, there wasn't any alternative. I was going to be successful. I decided that nothing would taste as good as being fit felt. Nothing would taste as good as being fit felt. And I would tell myself daily, because you understand, whenever you're changing your life, I don't care if it's weight loss or it's something else, whatever you're doing to change your life, it requires daily effort, daily self-talk, daily sacrifice. If it requires you get up at 5 a.m. to get out the door and go for a run, then that's exactly what you do. One of my favorite things that I had to do, I'm being facetious about that, right? Clean out the refrigerator. Because I could no longer eat the things in my refrigerator, so I had to clean out my refrigerator and throw away all the junk food. And then you got to go to the grocery store, right? And you got to buy carrots, those little baby carrots, The problem that I faced is, sorry, this mic is kind of bugging me. The problem that I faced is that it wasn't enough to have weight loss surgery. And it wasn't enough to cut back on the amount of food I ate. There was another component. You see, I had to change my life one more time. I had to become something that I had never in my life wanted to be, dreamed of being, or desired of being. I had to become an athlete. Because surgery's not enough, and eating less is not enough. You've got to move. So I decided one day, I am going to be an athlete. I had never in my life walked a mile, much less run a mile. Being 300 pounds, you don't walk a mile. You don't. I was there. You don't. I never, when I was in school, college, nothing. I had never done anything athletic. In fact, when I was in junior high and we had mandatory PE class, I would fake an asthma attack to get out of doing anything physical. I mean, I worked hard at this. But all of a sudden, I decided I'm going to become an athlete. Well, what do you do when you decide to do something that you've never done before? The first thing you have to do is you have to imagine it, envision it. What does it look like if I'm going to be an athlete? What does an athlete look like? And then I'd meditate on a day in the life of an athlete. What does an athlete do when their feet hit the ground when they get out of bed? How does an athlete get out of bed? What do they eat for breakfast? What do they wear? What do they do next? And then I would find some role models, some friends who were athletes, and I'd ask them lots of questions. What do you do? How do you do it? My mama, I wish y'all could have met my mama. She was a great lady. I have to tell y'all, this is completely off my topic, but I'm going to tell y'all a little story. This morning, as I was driving in from Dallas, I'm a big believer that my mama's with me. And I'm wearing a ring that my daddy gave my mama for their first wedding anniversary. So I'm flipping through the channels on my Sirius radio this morning, and I stopped for some unknown reason, not that I ever listened to it any other time. I stopped on the Elvis channel. And on the Elvis channel, immediately whenever I stopped on that channel, the song, How Great Thou Art, have you ever heard Elvis sing, How Great Thou Art? That song started playing. That's the song I played at my mother's funeral. My mother's here with me today. My mother bought me this book, and we were talking about this book a few minutes ago. My mother bought me this book whenever I graduated from law school, See You at the Top by Zig Ziglar, one of his very first books. And in this book, Ziglar talks about what we call BAM, B-A-A-M. I wonder where I'm at on my little PowerPoint here. Ooh, this thing's falling apart. So he talks in this book about BAM, also known as a block and a mailbox. And so when Ziglar was overweight and decided that he needed to start running, and so he was going to start running. So what did he do to start running? He went to the store and he bought the clothes of a runner. He bought some running shorts and some running shirts and some running shoes. And the morning that he was going to start, his alarm clock, he called it an opportunity clock. Have y'all ever heard that? Instead of an alarm clock, because he felt like that had a negative connotation. So he called it an opportunity clock, because when that thing goes off, you've got the whole day in front of you. So when his opportunity clock sounded that morning, he says, I'm going to read it to you. It's just a paragraph. He says, I hopped out of bed, slipped on those fancy running clothes and shoes, and I tore out the front door and ran a block all by myself. The next day, however, I did considerably better. I ran a block and a mailbox. The third day, it was a block and 2 mailboxes, then a block and 3 mailboxes, until finally one day I ran all the way around the block. And when I passed that milestone, I woke up the entire family and told them, look what Dad had done. And then one day I ran a half mile, and then a mile, and then a mile and a half, and then 2 miles. And I thought, you know what? I remembered that story from the book whenever my mama gave it to me. And I thought, you know what? If Ziglar can do it, I can do it. But I know you women will appreciate this. We'll do a lot of things for a lot of other people, but we'll do very little for ourselves. And I knew that if it was me doing it for me, when that opportunity clock went off that morning, the first morning it was time to get up and do something to be an athlete, I knew what I'd do. I wouldn't do it for me. So I had to find a motivation that would allow me to do it for some other bigger reason. So I found team and training through the Leukemia Lymphoma Society. Team in Training is a fundraising arm of the Leukemia Lymphoma Society, and they provide coaching and planning and events, athletic events. And in exchange for that, you raise money for cancer. Well, you see, my dad has had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma for 15 years. He's still with me, but he has had cancer for a very long time. And non-Hodgkin's lymphoma goes in and out of remission. Sometimes it's asleep and sometimes it's not. And so far, thankfully, the doctors have been able to get it to go back to sleep every time it's come around. So lymphoma is an issue that's very close to me, and obviously my father is somebody that's very close to me, and I thought, you know what? If I can't get out of bed in the morning for me, I'll get out of bed in the morning for him, because he can't go run, and I'm going to run while I can. So I joined Team in Training. I signed up, paid my money, started my fundraising. And when you do that, you got to sign up for an event, right? Well, they don't do small events. So I signed up for a half marathon. I had never run a half a mile in my life, and I signed up for 13.1 of those puppies. What was I thinking? Oh, yeah, I'm changing my life. So the first day of training, before training, I had to go out and buy my stuff, right? I had to go to the little run-in store. And I'd lost some weight, but, they don't make clothes at those run-in stores for people like me. So it was a struggle to find the right stuff. But I bought me some running pants and some running shirts and some running bras. You got to have your running bras, okay? And I bought a running belt. Did not know this, but you need a running belt. And I bought something called goo. Talk to me later if you want to know about goo. It's essential, but it's disgusting. It's food, okay? Food for runners. And so that first morning, that first Saturday, we're going to meet at White Rock Lake. And White Rock Lake is a fantastic place to train. It is one of the most beautiful places in Dallas. It's very motivational to train there because it's so beautiful, and there's these beautiful trails. They're so nice. It goes all the way around the lake. 9.5 miles all the way around the lake. Well, that first Saturday, I got up, got dressed, got my shoes on, showed up for training at 6 a.m. that Saturday morning at White Rock Lake with my team and my coach, and they said, run a mile. All I had to do that first day was run a mile. Well, I'd never run a mile. What am I going to do here? What have I gotten myself into? So I take off and I'm walking. And then I get all warmed up and I think, okay, I can do this. I'm going to jog a little bit. Probably was more like trotting, but we'll call it jogging because it makes me feel better. So I take off and I jog about the distance of a mailbox. And I walked the rest of the way, and I'm thinking, if Ziglar can do it, I can do it. The next Saturday we showed up, I had to do 2 miles. And so off I go, walk a little bit, and then I jogged a mailbox, and then I walked a little bit, and I jogged another mailbox, and I accomplished 2 miles that day. And the next Saturday was 3 miles, and I'd walk a little bit and run a little bit, and walk a little bit and run a little bit, and I accomplished 3 miles. And pretty soon I was doing intervals all summer. They call these intervals in the running world, they call them fartleks. Now, seriously, there's a man out there named Mr. Fartlek. It really is. I'm not making this up, I promise. There's a man out there named Mr. Fartlek who discovered that you can be more efficient in long-distance running if you walk a little bit and you run a little bit. And they named this whole thing after him, Mr. Fartlek. So here I am, going through life doing fartleks around the lake at White Rock Lake, the trails at White Rock Lake. And so, as with anything, there are some setbacks, right? Well, I'm going to tell you about one of mine. As I told y'all, this is a very personal story to me, so I hope y'all don't mind me getting a little personal. Are any of you out there runners? Okay. then you're not going to know what I'm talking about, but you will. So whenever you set out and you're early in your running career and you're just getting yourself trained up in running, there's this thing that happens. And the day it happened to me, we lived very close to White Rock at the time, and so I'd left my house and gone out for a run, and I got about 4 miles away from my house, and I had to go. I don't mean go run, I mean I had to go. And all there was a nasty porta potty. And I didn't mean I could wait an hour till I got back home. I didn't mean I could turn around and go home to go. I mean I had to go right now. Well, I got my running belt. See, now you know why you got to have a running belt. I got my phone out of my running belt, and I called my husband. I said, "Husband, come and get me. I got to go." And he said, "What?" He said, "There's a porta potty right there." I said, No, I got to go. Come and get me. And like a good husband, he came and got me. And he took me home, and I went potty. And when I came out of the potty, he says, "Now, honey, if you're going to be an athlete, you got to do what athletes do. Athletes use porta potties." And I'm like, "Those are nasty." And he said, "I don't care. Athletes use porta potties." And then he explained to me that there's this whole scientific reason, especially for women, that when you start running and you're training yourself up, that your insides start jiggling around and things start happening, and then things start happening. And so, you got to use the porta potty. So then he took out this paper towel and he tore it into pieces, palm-sized pieces. And he gives them to me to put in my running belt. And then he finds me a little individually sized packet of a wet wipe. And he says, "Stick that in your running belt, okay?" And the next Saturday, he gets me up and pats my rear and sends me off to run. And I used the porta potty. Then came the day that it was time to loop the lake. In Dallas, anybody that runs around White Rock, looping the lake is a rite of passage. Remember I said 9.5 miles around the lake. And so the day came when it was my time to run the lake, because you remember I'm training for 13.1. So at some point I've got to accomplish 9.5 of these 13.1. So the day came, it was my loop the lake day. And off I go to loop the lake, 9.5 miles. I'm going to end up back where I started from. And I'm going, and I'm running, and I'm giving myself my affirmations. No one can do it for me but me. No one can do it for me but me. And off I go, and I'm running and walking, and running a little and walking a little, and running a little and walking a little, and using the porta potty, and drinking my Gatorade, and drinking my water, and eating my goo. Oof. And I get to about 8 miles. And my brain is completely shut off. My body is exhausted. And all I can think of, the only affirmation I can think of, I know you know it, you don't let me say it alone. Can you go to the next one? Oh, there it is. I think I can, I think I can, think I can, I think I can, think I can. And pretty soon, there it was. The starting line, the finish line. I had about done it. I can hear my personal trainer blare in my head. He's screaming at me like he does in my training sessions. Sprint to the finish, sprint to the finish. And off I go. I'm going to sprint to the finish. I'm going to give it everything I've got. Leave it all on the trail, he'd say. So have you ever seen on Facebook or the internet those pictures where on one side is what you think you look like, and on the other side is what you really look like? I'm pretty sure there's one of those out there for me. On the one side, there is a beautiful gazelle with butterfly wings sprinting to the finish. And on the other side is a turtle going through quicksand. And so here I go. I'm sprinting to the finish. The gazelle with butterfly wings or the turtle or whatever it is. And I made it. I'm almost ready. If I can do 9.5 miles, I can do 13.1, right? So I trained some more, and then the day came for the half marathon. And my husband, I ran by myself. I trained by myself, which I really enjoyed. But the day of the half marathon, my husband, Team O'Neill, we were going to run together. Now, understand, by that point, my husband was in way better shape than me. My husband was an athlete in college, so he had a little experience in that. But he decides he's going to run with me, so off we go. And I'm very slow. I will never be fast. I was slow. I'm still slow, and it's okay. But he's not slow, so my pace is annoying him, right? It's not hard for him to keep up with me. And he's talking about, look at that patio on that house over there. Isn't that pretty? And look at that barbecue grill they have. And oh my gosh, there's a bird. And I'm like, honey, stop. This is hard for me. I don't care about that house. So finally we compromised, right? And I told him, like, you go ahead, run on ahead. And if you get ahead a little ways, then you can come back and check on me. So he does. He runs off, and then he'll come back. And then he'll run off, and he'll come back. And here I am chugging along, turtling or whatever, getting along down this half marathon that I'm going to do. And I get to about mile 10, and I was done. You see, I was used to running at beautiful White Rock Lake, but the half marathon was on a dusty trail in Fort Worth, Texas, and it hadn't rained lately, so it was really dusty, and it was hot, and they didn't have enough porta potties, and they didn't have enough water, and I was miserable. And at mile 10, if I could have sat down on a park bench and called me an Uber, that's exactly what I wanted to do. But the problem with that was I was in the middle of freaking nowhere. Uber wasn't going to get to me. For me to get to an Uber, I had to still get to where the finish line was. So I might as well not sat down. I saw my team and training coach, Connie. She was standing there at mile 10, and she says, how you doing? I'm like, I want to call an Uber. I'm done. She says, no, you're not. I'm going to finish it with you. So off we go. Every time I'd feel like stopping, she'd start talking to me, and she'd say, just put one foot in front of the other. 1 foot in front of the other. And that became my mantra for those last 3 miles. 1 foot in front of the other. 1 foot in front of the other. That's all you got to do. Don't look down there. You look right here. 1 foot in front of the other. 1 foot in front of the other. And pretty soon, there in the distance, I saw the finish line. And I saw my husband was waiting before the finish line. And he ran back to get me. This isn't working, is it? Okay, I'll just wave at you then. So he ran back to get me, and we held hands, and I put 1 foot in front of the other, and I can hear my trainer, Blair, yelling in my ear, sprint to the finish, sprint to the finish, leave it all out there. And whether I looked like a gazelle with butterfly wings or a turtle through quicksand, my husband and I crossed the finish line together. I was almost last. But you know what? I wasn't in it to win it. I was in it to finish it. And I did it. I changed my life. I became an athlete. But the battle, the wheel of life, it didn't stop there. It actually starts there. When you get to the finish line and you accomplish that goal and you change your life, that's only the beginning. Because you know what? While you're changing your life on that spoke of the wheel, something else is out of balance. And you constantly have to reevaluate. So, I tell you all of this to tell you that it is possible to change your life. When you finish that finish line and you start over, you see it's a constant process of starting over again and again and again. And which spoke are you working on now? And at some level, you have to work on them all. You can't just work on your family and your faith and neglect everything else. You've still got to go to work and work on your financial and your career field. You've still got to work on your mental, your spiritual, and your personal selves. You've got to work on it all. It's okay to focus on one thing, over-focus on that one thing to build it up. But just remember, while you're doing that, you've still got a whole wheel over here you've got to go back and pay attention to. And so what I do is I focus on one part of the wheel, and I build it up, and then I focus on another part of the wheel. And how do you do that? The first thing you have to do is reimagine. Where are you at right now, and where do you want to be? Reimagine yourself. Visualize it. Dream it. Dream big. Dream wild. What do you want to be? You can be anything. Anything you want to be. Reimagine it. And once you figure it out, then you have to reinvest in yourself. I reinvested in myself. So to make that next move, you have to reinvest in yourself. You have to do daily self-affirmations. You have to take massive action, as Michael Ray Newman will tell you. And you have to take that massive action tomorrow. And you have to take massive action the next day. And you have to keep taking massive action until you achieve that next goal. And then you take massive action to achieve the next goal, and the next goal, and the next goal. Because it continues until the day you die. The wheel of life keeps going around and around and around until the day you die. Don't ever quit. My mama had a poem that, and I understand I've almost made it all the way through without crying, right? My mama had a poem that hung on her bathroom wall. It was called Don't Quit. And I don't know that I can do it. I'm going to try. When the road you're trudging seems all uphill, and the funds are low and the debts are high, and you want to smile, but you have to sigh. When your cares are getting you down a bit, rest if you must, but don't you quit. I crossed the finish line of my half marathon on October 18th of 2015. I weighed 165 pounds less than my highest weight. Now, doesn't stop there. Because you see, after that, I started focusing on other spokes of my wheel, and my rear end found a little of that I'd lost. You see, it found it back here. So it doesn't stop. You can't quit. But you go back and you reimagine and you reinvest to reinvent yourself. And as long as you don't quit, you keep going and you can do it. If I can do it, you can do it. If I can do it, anybody can do it. I'm telling you, I promise you, it's not going to be easy, but it's worth it. So what do you reimagine yourself as?
Hold on a second. Hold on.
I'm not going anywhere.
I hope you guys wrote that down. Reimagine, reinvent. What does it say?
Reimagine, reinvest,
reinvest, and reinvent. That's pretty awesome.
Thanks.
Did you come up with that all by yourself?
I did. I had a little help one day.
Hey, Ryan, can you roll back to the Wheel of Life? You had a little help one day?
I wrote that in July.
I've kind of been hammering this theme home if you haven't noticed yet. It's process. It's your process, okay? Your process. Live your life by design. That's what and I've done that. I didn't intentionally set out to do that, but that's what these people have done. This is your life process. You remember I'm simple, right? I'm pretty simple. Disc, 2 questions. I can figure out how to communicate and not, upset you, kind of get along with you. It's pretty simple, right? This right here is a checkup from the neck up. The Ziglar documentary, which we're going to try to fit in at the next break, 10 minutes. Michelle Prince is in it, and she defines it excellent. It's just a way for you to gauge where you are in all areas of that life. So if you guys will take a second and look at this and just write down those spokes of that wheel. And understand that 1 is crappy, okay? 10 is awesome. And Michelle explains it really well. She goes, so what you do is really go through and say, where am I in this areas of my life? And put a little dot there, and then you connect the dots. And it's supposed to be a wheel, right? You get it? Spokes of the wheel. And if it's all 10s, guess what? You have a pretty smooth ride, right? Everybody with me? And if it's bumpy, what happens? You got some work to do, right? That's what this is about. This is a life process. And I'll tell you the big thing that I have a takeaway, and I call it take massive action, because Mr. Ziglar's and Edwin Britt's trust process, that the T stands for something, R-U-S-T, and the final T is take action. Well, we've kind of modified that to take massive action today, right now. How long ago did I meet you, Michelle?
March.
March of this year?
Yeah.
Man, it seems like a lot longer. No, I'm just kidding.
Is that a good thing? I'm not sure.
Well, your book, when will it be out?
January.
Bam.
Be the blaze.
This girl takes action. I've seen her from March to tell me what she wants to, May? What?
No,
May?
I said, hey.
Oh, okay.
I said, hey, you watch out. I'll tell the story about what convinced me to take that action, and I'll make you cry.
No. I'm plenty of that in a minute. I have plenty of that going on. So, but that's what, Michelle, I've watched her take massive action. She does it. It's in her, this book's been in her head for a while, all of a sudden, bam, she's writing it. When she wants to do something, she does it. And that is what really was impressed. And she uses this right here. And you notice sometimes she says, I focus on one aspect of the wheel and the other one kind of goes down, and that happens. If you have somebody put in the hospital, well, guess what? There's going to be some part of your wheel suffered, right? But if you're really trying to build a business and design a life, and you're really working on financially, working on building a business, making it stable, there's some parts that are going to have to sacrifice. But this is something you can always go back to and have a process. I think this is probably the most powerful thing that we talk about today, because it's the overall life process. All right? Michelle, I'm sincerely grateful for you. Let's give her a hand. Thank you. That was awesome. Okay, does everybody want to take a 5-minute bio break right after lunch? Yes, we do? Okay, 5-minute quick bio break. Got to try to get back real quick, and then we've got the man, the traveling soul, been up there in New York City, get a rope, Edwin Britt.